I mentioned the Teatro Nuovo and wanting to have all the right instruments, and we don't necessarily know a year in advance what pieces we're going to need. Like I mentioned, the 19th century was a big laboratory for brass instrument experimentation, and so if you go to the early 19th century for Italian opera, they would have used serpents and upright serpents and bass horns, and then eventually ophicleides, and then that would have turned into valved ophicleides, and then at the end of the 19th century, Verdi worked with the Italian maker Peliti and came up with a valve contrabass trombone, which they called the Trombone Contrabasso a Verdi. So I was worried that one of these operas that would need the valve contrabass trombone might come up. Now, these days we call that a cimbasso, right? It's an instrument that uses a tuba mouthpiece. It's usually an F, and a tuba player would play it. That's kind of a 20th century invention. Cimbasso, really in the 19th century, meant whatever your guy has, right? It could have been an ophicleide, it could have been a serpent, and this is one of those places where you have to do some research about what they actually had and what they used and what would be the appropriate thing for each work. And they would have gone through and replaced those things, right? So something that in the early 19th century they would have played on bass horn or upright serpent. If they revived that same piece 20 years later, they might have played that on ophicleide or even the valve contrabass trombone, which today we call cimbasso. But cimbasso was kind of a catch-all word that meant any of those things. Cimbasso didn't originally mean that sort of bent tuba on a stick that we see it as now. So I kind of desperately wanted one of these valve, trombone contrabasso a Verdis, just in case one of these late Verdi operas came up, and then I got to scramble. So one day I'm at Dillon Music in New Jersey, and I look up on the wall, and there's exactly what I'm looking for is up there on the wall in the music store. So I said to the clerk at the front desk, "Yeah, is that for sale?" He said, "Oh no, that's Steve Dillon's personal collection. Can't touch it. Don't even look at it." Right. So like many people who have interacted with Steve Dillon, he's gracious enough to accept our face space requests and be friends with us, even though he's not really our friend. We've done business with him, and I'm grateful because he's a really cool guy that has a lot of information.
Especially all of his Arthur Pryor research that he posts on.
Yeah, absolutely. He's amazing. So I got on Facebook Messenger and sent him a picture of it, and I said, "Is this for sale?" And he said yes. and I said, "Well, I'm at the store now. Your guys won't let me see it." And the phone rings at the counter right in front of me, and the guy working the counter picks up and says, "Hello?" And I can hear through the phone. He said, "Let him play it." The guy's kind of looking around. Are you watching us on the security camera? What's going on? So I, he took it down from the wall. It was cable tied to the wall, zip tied to the wall, and he cut it down, and I played a few notes on it, and it was exactly what I was looking for. It was, it might have been a little bit later, 1900 or something, and it's marked Parisi, which I can't find any reference to anywhere. So I suspect it was that same sort of thing that we're seeing today with the Chinese instruments, where it'll be made in one of the big factories, and then a music store somewhere else will put their name on it and bring it in. It is exactly like the Peliti instruments, down to every little detail is exactly like the Peliti instruments. So I can't prove it, but my guess is that it was made by Peliti, which was the instrument maker who worked with Verdi to design the instrument. Wow. Also, the instrument maker who worked with Wagner to do a lot of the the Wagner tubas and things like that. So again, that's a neat little intersection of craftsman and composer in history. That's fun.
That's awesome.
So that instrument's playable, but I haven't had it restored yet, and there have been no opportunities to play it that have come up yet. But it's just I smile every time I think about that exchange with Steve Dillon and
That's awesome.
and
how long ago was that again?
That was last summer.
Yeah, okay.
That's funny.
No, not even last summer. That was just this past fall.